Hi everyone, my name is Jake Liberty. I'm a Wheaton alum and I had a winter 2018 internship at Formlabs. Today I'm going to be telling you how to use one of their 3D printers called the Form 2. But first we're going to talk about SLA printing with the Form 2 versus traditional FDM printing. Traditional FDM printing, which you'll find with our Prusas, uses a extruded melted plastic that extrudes downwards onto a build plate, as opposed to the Formlabs, which uses a compound resin which is liquid, and the build plate comes down from the top and the resin is polymerized onto the build plate with UV light. So first, before I give you a more intimate introduction to the machines, we're going to go over to PreForm. All right, so first we're going to open up PreForm. And we want to make sure that we've selected the printer that we're going to print to. In our case, we're printing to Brandy Donkey. And then we want to hit select and make sure that the material that we're going to print with is correct. And then we're not too concerned about high resolution, so we want the fastest print possible. All right, and we can shift right click to pan, and just regular right click moves us around. Notice the front of the build plate is in front of us, that arrow, and then the wiper side is to the left. All right, so we're going to drag and drop a file over. And notice on the right, we have under details, we have an estimated print time, but that does not include supports right now. So that's our one-click print button, but we're going to go ahead and do this manually. So first, as a size feature, if we click our model, we can scale it up. We can also orient our model. And keep in mind that this is all happening upside down. All right, we're gonna generate some supports now. All right, so notice that it makes a little raft with your file name along the side of it, and those little supports coming up are what we're going to be editing next. So you can click to remove, highlights it in red, or you can click to add. So for this, we're going to start over because we have a little too many supports. And notice that now the model is covered in red. So printability, there's an error on the side. The red is called minima. And so when we click to add a support back, we remove the minima. So right now we're just going to manually add supports until all the minima are gone. And make sure that when you're adding supports onto a flat surface. Curved surfaces are not ideal, and surfaces that are corners, such as like the edges on a box, those are not ideal for supports. Just for removing, your final product will not be as smooth. Okay, so now that we have all of our supports manually added, we can go ahead and click apply. And we have a lot less supports to deal with now, which will be a lot easier once this print is finished. The layout section is for organizing multiple prints, but we don't need to talk about that right now. We can just go ahead and hit start a print. Just double check, create a job name, make sure you're signed into your dashboard account, and hit upload job. So first things first, with the Form 2, the biggest difference is that safety plays a little bit bigger of a role. Notice that I'm wearing gloves. So since we're working with a liquid 3D printer, liquid resin does cause you to develop a rash after exposed contact with it. So that is why we wear gloves. That is why we always clean the printer when we're done with it. That is why we always clean the tools with isopropyl. We wash our hands with soap and water. Take note that even though we do clean the tools and the printer and the build plate with isopropyl, we do not clean our hands with isopropyl, because that makes it more easily dissolvable into your skin, basically. So this is the Form 2. This is the lid. This is the cartridge of resin in the back. This is the resin tank, the build plate, and the wiper. So a closer look at everything. Resin cartridge, lid, build plate, wiper, and tank. All right, so changing a resin tank, we want to make sure we open up the lid, we take the build plate off. That's the first thing we do. Next, we want to make sure we can move the wiper with our hands. We just want to make sure it's in the middle of the tank. We can pop it off with both fingers. Take it off the little runner there, put it onto the side, and we can do the same exact thing with the tank. Pop that out. And make sure you're grabbing it by the sides, because there is an optical window on the bottom that you don't want to touch. It is glass. As well, there is an optical window down here that we do not want to touch. We don't want to get resin on there, because we need to clean the machine if that's the case. We have a new resin tank if we're changing colors. Just pop it back in. It says tank inserted. Make sure the wiper's in. You can move that over to the side. Take a clean build plate. In this case, I'm just putting back the same one. All right, so one thing that you want to make sure is that when you put in your tank and when you put in your cartridge, both of them match. It'll say black V3 for this one, but you want to make sure that both resins match. The tank does get programmed with the cartridge that you have. So there is a chip in the tank, and it knows which type of resin is in the tank as soon as you make your first print in a new tank. All right, so now that we've sent our print over with PreForm, we've double checked that our cartridge is black, our resin tank is using black resin. The printer will double check that. All we need to do is we need to make sure that our build plate is clear and clean, and we just need to imprint now. Again, make sure the cartridge vent is open and the build plate is clear. Hit confirm. And at this point, the printer will preheat. In this case, it's going to 34.4 degrees Celsius. It'll take about half an hour. So, yeah. And then we're going to be printing. All right, so now we've moved over to our post-print station. One thing to note with the Form 2 is that once we're done with our print, we're not done with our print. We still need to cure it. We still need to wash it of any unused resin. So we remove it from the build plate. We clean the build plate. We wash it with the Form Wash, and then we cure it. We bake it essentially with the Form Cure, which is a UV oven, essentially, and this is a bath of isopropyl alcohol. All right, so first things first, with the Form Wash, we want to get this prepared so that we can put our print directly in. So we want to go select our time settings, and you want to find the time that is appropriate for the resin that you're using. All right, so using this tool, and we have the build plate with this holder, we're going to hold it down firmly, and essentially what we're going to do is we're just going to get under the raft, and we're just going to kind of shimmy around it until it pops loose. So this is pop loose. We take this and we're just going to put it right in to the wash. And then with a clean digit, scroll up, hit start. And now we're going to move on to cleaning the build plate. Put a little isopropyl. Actually, you can scrape it directly into the trash. Caution, it is very important to not put uncured resin, or for that matter, resin of any kind, down the sink. That is an environmental hazard, it is a health hazard, it is not good all around. So now we can take it off the holder at this part. And just make sure that this entire build plate is not sticky. The idea is that even though we're using gloves at all times, we want everything to be clean enough to handle without gloves. Okay, so now we have a clean build plate. We can go ahead and put that right back into the machine. All right, so when the wash cycle is done, it will come up and we can take our print off. So this just needs to be cured. It might still be a little soft to the touch and flimsy. You could choose to remove the supports on your print now before we cure it or after. I personally like to do it before we cure because it tends to get brittle afterwards. So very carefully, we're just gonna use this tool and we're just gonna snip supports off. And you might notice that there are some small ridges where the supports used to be. You can, at this time, choose to chip those off. We want to make sure that, again, like the wash, we have our resin settings put in here. So, right, for this particular resin, 60 minutes, 60 degrees Celsius. Open the cure, put our piece in, close the lid, and hit start. And note, that's going to take a little bit of time to preheat before it starts to cure. For a 60-minute cure time, I would probably give about an hour and a half or 2 hours for that whole cycle to finish.